Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Joe Kazana, and I'm with you again tonight with the Joe Kazana Promotions podcast. And as promised, I've got one of my oldest friends inside the wrestling business, and quite possibly the greatest championship belt maker of all time. This, of course, is the ace of all belts, Dave Millican. Dave, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, buddy. And I'll be writing that check out tonight for that introduction as usual.
That's all right, man. The Cazana.
Gotcha. I'm looking right at it.
Yeah, there you go. Man, you just don't know how glad I am and how happy I am that you decided that you wanted to jump on here and do this. Man, for years and years, I admired your work. Everybody admires your work. I know that pretty much you've told your story 5,000 times to everybody from Chris Jericho to Lord knows who. But just real quick, I always put this out there. This show is devoted, basically for people that, I want to talk to.
Sure.
But I don't devote it to WWE or AEW. It's mostly devoted to JCP or the NWA. That's who it's devoted to. And that's kind of the way we go, or whatever, my guest is doing at the time. I know tonight we're going to probably hit on different things besides NWA and JCP. But again, like I said, you've told this story a million times. Please tell my fans how in the world you started making these great championships, man.
Well, I grew up just outside of Memphis, Tennessee. And, I grew up in a time when you didn't just go online and decide you want a replica belt. So if you wanted something like that, and you were a kid, then you had to make it. And, like a lot of kids from that era, a lot of cardboard belts and things like that, until I had an uncle who worked in a shop where he could cut out steel plates for me. And so we started getting a little better, and they started off with a lot of vinyl seat covers and things like that got sacrificed until I worked my way up until real leather sometime in the 80s. And it just got better. I never planned to make a living at it or anything like that. It just got to be something that really fascinated me. And when I had one, then I wanted more, and eventually started doing some for like back in those days. Now everybody's got an indie show, and that's fine. Sure. That's what it really is. But back then, if you weren't part of one of the organizations, especially the NWA, then you were an outlaw show.
Exactly.
So not only did I run an outlaw show for a few years, but before that, I was making belts, and some of them got sold off to outlaw shows. And I already was friends with Jerry Lawler, but I just didn't really bring all that up in the beginning. And some of the belts started looking a little worse for wear, and I started fixing some stuff up for him. And so, it just it grew from there. I really, though, I ordered a belt from Reggie Parks because that was the pinnacle. And all I wanted to do was have that Reggie Parks belt. And it is, I think my shoulder's in the way, but it is in a case behind me now. And it got used for the last 2 years of the USWA as the unified title. But during that conversation, because again, this is not at a time when you're emailing and texting or anything like that, he said, mail me some pictures of what you're doing. I'd like to see it. So I did that. And he said, why aren't you doing these like I do them? And I was like, well, because I don't have any idea how you're doing them. And, this is the way that I make them, with my liquid steel and my steel plates and my trophy pieces and my whatever else I could work with. And I didn't know how the plates were etched. And back then, again, you didn't jump online and find out like you can do in, 1,000 different places right now, and some with better information than others.
Exactly.
So anyway, that conversation just grew until the point that he started opening some doors. I think there's a big misconception out there, with all due respect to Reggie, who was just the greatest, that he taught me everything. And the truth is, he let me learn on my own by looking at him. And of course, he did open the doors for the etching and teaching me about etching and plating and those sorts of things. But he let me come along at my own pace, and he let me learn. And I know when we'd get together, he'd look at some of my stuff and he'd, critique it, say, oh, I was wondering when you were going to pick that up, And so, best friend and mentor in the world to have if you're going to be in the belt business.
Right. Well, I've heard a lot of things about Reggie Parks, and I guess I never had an opportunity to meet him. And like I said, it's kind of like I always wanted to meet Danny Hodge as a pro wrestler myself. That's who I wanted to meet, and I never had that opportunity to meet him. So as a premier belt maker, Reggie Parks, like you said, is the pinnacle of what he does. Now, apparently, you are the pinnacle. You are the standard bearer. Everybody measures what they do after Dave Millican. I
appreciate that. It means a lot coming from you with your history and your family history in the business to say something like that. Real quick, Danny Hodge story for you.
Yeah, sure.
The first time I met Danny Hodge, Reggie introduced me to him in, I want to say it was in New Jersey. And I didn't realize at the time that they had done some tagging many, many moons ago. And so as Reggie sticks his hand out to shake hands with Danny just hooks him and takes him down to the floor. And this is at a time when Reggie was still pretty good shape, and took Reggie to his knees. And Reggie, of course, comes up in a minute. He lets him up, and they, they hug it out and it's, laugh it off. And then he says, in that inimitable Reggie Parks voice, "Dave, this is Danny Hodge." And then he stuck his hand out, and I just kind of bowed to him. It was a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Hodge.
That's probably what I would have done too, because I heard a lot of stories about his handshakes, and I've seen his feats of strength with his handshake. So, that was the right thing for you to do at that point, man. We just bow to him and say, "Hey, how you doing?"
In person, I never saw him do the pliers where he could break the pliers. I never saw it in person, but I did watch him just make applesauce out of an apple.
I've seen him do that, like on video. The pliers I've seen on video, and like I said, I've heard a lot of stories from God rest his soul, Mac McMurray. He used to tell stories about him all the time. And
Mac was great.
Yeah, he was something else, man. But like I said, you are now the pinnacle of what a belt maker, for a lack of a better word, is. Because honestly, personally, I think what you do is not necessarily steel and leather. I think what you do is artwork.
I appreciate that,
brother. You have made some of the most classic championships that's ever been made. And we were talking. You made this WWE belt that's the hollow plate, which I don't get, but that's just me. But a set of belts that you did make that I'm very, very familiar with are the NWA World Women's Tag Team Championships.
Yes.
I guess it's like a teal powder blue top with the one center plate.
Yes.
Beautiful belts, man. Beautiful belts.
Unique for sure.
Very.
Billy Corgan got together with the Fandu people, and they ran through what they wanted, and then they asked me what I could do to help finish that creation out. And I was like, well, whatever you want. And I looked at it and pitched some side plates for it, but that didn't work out. So I just found a way to texture the leather all the way around where there would be side plates, and did the teal coloring on them and stuff like that. So I was glad to be a part of it.
Man. They really are nice. I have Kenzie and Ella, the former champions. They lost it at the pay-per-view the other night. But I've had the pleasure of having Kenzie Page and Ella Envy on my shows a few times, and they brought the belts and defended the belts on my shows. And, even though the side plates aren't there, Dave, that center plate with that teal color, it just something makes it pop.
Well, they really are unique in the sense of today. Everybody's got this, kind of back in the original early belt days. It was very common to have a championship belt that just had a main plate on it, or Reggie always called them a buckle, which I thought was funny because it doesn't buckle anything. But,
right.
But it does have just that was common, and I think that's probably what the idea was when Billy had the idea for the single plate belt again. So just to be involved with bringing back something that was kind of back to the very, very early days of championship belts. I was happy to be involved with it.
Well, I tell you something. Billy Corgan is definitely a historian of the professional wrestling industry. I mean, just look at his women's championship. I mean, look at the Burke. It's
Yeah.
it's so simple in its design, but yet so unique in its design.
Yeah.
It's a great belt, and I can't think of anybody better than Camille to carry that thing. She does a great job. Uh,
Yes.
but
No
but
doubt.
enough of that. I'm gonna step into a little bit more as far as what you're doing as far as your belt making skills go, because like I said, they're impeccable. There's nobody any better. I'll put your
I
belts up
appreciate it,
against
man.
anybody's belts in the country, or even out of the country for that matter. So,
Yeah.
because there's
Yeah.
a
We've been around
lot of
for a day or
people that,
two.
yeah, there's a lot of people making championships,
Oh yeah.
outside the United States, and
Sure.
granted, they look pretty good. Um,
Well,
I
some do.
guess,
You
yeah,
have you have I mean, you can Facebook and eBay are flooded with 175 and $200
yeah.
really really bad illegal bootlegs. What are you going to do? Sue somebody in Pakistan?
Right, right, right. Yeah,
And
you and I had
people.
this conversation here a while back about my tag belts.
Oh, that guy.
Yeah,
Well, yeah,
yeah. Well, and, I mean, and that guy's another story for another day. Who doesn't even be dignified on my podcast.
yeah, right.
But the design was definitely a Dave Millican design.
Yeah, which is just it's factored into our LLC designs, and I get a lot of credit for things that originated with Reggie, but I get a lot of credit for those probably because I kept them alive and
Right.
did various versions over the years and all of that. So I get lumped in with that, and some of it is justified, and honestly, that one's justified because I've done God knows how many styles like that, but
Sure.
I sometimes find out, and it's complimentary and it's meant well, but people will say, "What about this belt in 1982?" It's like, well, in 1982, I was a teenager, so I don't know.
Well, you
I
were
mean,
making them out of this leather thing over here.
yeah, right. I could
Yeah.
give you the history on it, but I
Yeah.
didn't make it.
Yeah.
When I was
That's that's
15.
that's that's great.
Um,
Yeah.
but but yeah, that there's all kind of and you have you know um, you have some talented guys out there, and you have some guys that are just jealous and honestly, at times, it was kind of funny at first, then even kind of like imitation, sincerest form of flattery, and
Sure. Sure.
now they go to the point where I woke up this morning and I had a few messages. It's like, oh my god, these guys are going to do this thing on you, and you're another thing where you're such a horrible person. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Well, you know what? These people
Join
that
the
say that,
join the join the club.
dude, these people that say you're a horrible person, they don't know you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just plain and simple. They don't know who you are. They don't know what you're all about. They don't have a clue.
Or in
Um,
this case, it's kind of and this is all I'll justify. But in this case, it's kind of ringleader. It's the ringleader is kind of a guy that things got sideways with and didn't work out his way, and so now I'm public enemy number one. If that's enough time on that,
yeah, it is what it is, man. It
it is
is
what it
what it
is.
is.
That's enough time on that garbage.
Exactly, exactly. But there is one thing I do want to talk to you about real quick before we go into some of the other history of what you've done. Let's
Sure,
talk about just for a second the Southeastern Championship title that
let's
you
do
made
it.
for me. I would love to be able to sit here and show it to you, but I don't have it. The champ has got it.
Yeah,
But I know that you and I had, God, I guess long before you ever made it, I guess we had been talking a couple of years about doing it,
yeah,
and just it finally worked out. We had a picture. Finally, we had a picture. And I believe that when I sent you the picture, I said, "Man, that 3D eagle, yada yada yada." You said, "I can't do the Malkovich belt." you know,
yeah,
and I said, "Well, what can you do?" So I mean, and you showed me what you could do with it, but and I know we guessed at the side plates, and I said this in the documentary that we did on the family. There was nothing that was there as far as sides, and it was just something that you and I actually collaborated with and said, "Hey, this might have been what he wanted on there. Or it could have been something he was thinking about."
sure.
But just a little bit about how you did that belt so close, like the plate itself, the main plate. how close you came to the original, man. How did you actually do this? Because it is a beautiful belt. People talk about it all the time, man. I mean, who did your belt? I said, who do you think did it? You know, I said, look at the name on it. I mean, there was only one person that could actually do that championship justice, and that was you. I mean, how did you go about making it look as close to the original as you could?
Well, we probably could have made a custom mold, and spent a lot of time and money doing that, and done a cast work on for sure on side plates.
Oh yeah.
And then you know, a little over 20 years ago, a guy came into our organization. At the time, he had come to me. And then I sent him over to, at the time, the guy that handled mostly Reggie's business, Ed Schumann, and his name is Rico Man. And Rico, like he has so many classic belts from some of the most famous IWGP belts, mm-hmm. and the AEW belt, and had to fine tune a lot of WWE art that wouldn't work with our process if he didn't. And he is the guy that really just kept on with your art until he had it where you and I felt it was going to work. And he gets a lot of credit for that, or he should get a lot of credit for that. Mm-hmm. You know, one thing people say in promotions for me to do their shows is, you know, belt designer. And the truth is, other than saying, I like this, I don't like that, add this, take that out, I've never been much of a belt designer. And quite honestly, neither was Reggie.
Right.
You know, we oversee it. We say what's good and what might need to be changed. But that credit goes, especially in the case of your belt, your mm-hmm. Southeastern belt, to Rico for nailing that artwork. So that
he did. It's almost spot on perfect. I mean, even down to the fonts, you know, the fonts are, I mean, dead balls on accurate, you know, yeah. I mean, yeah, it is absolutely perfect. There's, in my own personal opinion, and I know it's mine, I own it, but it's one of the most beautiful belts I think that you made, that was designed. I mean, it's just the color, you know, the old fashioned black leather with the gold plates that you really just don't see a whole lot of anymore without it having some kind of color in it or something like that. You know, it's just, well, and all the way down to the stones, you know, the stones that you put in there that you said you had literally forever, you know. I mean, it's just, it's a gorgeous piece of artwork, basically, is what it is. And if it were here, it'd be displayed. You know, it's
serving the purpose that we made it for. So
it is, and it's seen a lot of television. It saw its way onto Channel 10 about 3 weeks ago, and I think you actually saw some of the footage.
And I've gotten a chance late at night when I would kind of unwind a little bit to see a few of your shows.
Yeah. It looks great. Okay. What do you think? What do you think?
Man, I sent my buddy locally here, about 20 minutes from my house, Barry Koloff, he runs Rocket City Championship Wrestling, and I sent him the name of the channel and said, look some of this stuff up as far as production and how they put the show together, the production,
right,
you know,
right,
and how impressive that it is, and a master of working with what you have. And I can relate, you know, as far as having to work with what you have. That's how I get started. Anyway, I sent it to Barry, and I need to follow up with him. But I told him, I was like, hey man, you know, if you're looking for some new ideas and some pointers, Barry's great with his stuff. But at times, we have a lot of guys come and go when it comes to our video production stuff.
Right.
So anyway, I liked it so much that I sent it over to my friend here, who's been my friend for quite a while, and and said, hey, man, you might be able to pick up something from here because Joe's been around a long time and knows what he's doing here. And you got, Dr. Tom involved and all of that. Anyway,
right.
That's what I thought of it. If I didn't think all of that of it, I sure wouldn't have sent it to one of my local friends who I help out with his show sometimes.
Well, I would have think you would have called me. You'd have said, Joe, you're my buddy and everything, but that show was the shit. It was horrible, on, but no, I mean, I appreciate it. I mean, we really do work really hard with what we've got to work with. I mean, it's not a WWE production by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, you don't want it to be.
No, I don't. I wanted it. I was shooting for mostly, old studio wrestling, like what NWA is kind of sort of doing now with some of their stuff. But we've actually, we branched out a little bit. We're going to bigger venues, and coming up here in the not so distant future of season 2, that's on YouTube now, is that big sellout crowd we had in Coalfield of about 800 people. Awesome. And we've not looked back. So, I'm glad you like it, man. It's just, it does my heart good to be able to put together something that people within the industry actually will sit down and watch and enjoy it. That's what I'm going for.
It's hard for people that didn't live through the territory days to have a territory feel. Right. And your show and take this, and everybody wants to be international and worldwide. Well, you are anyway, the minute you hit YouTube.
Oh, sure.
Right. So, sure. But if you didn't live through those days, and then it's hard to capture that magic. And thank God you did live through those days. And I lived through those days.
We both did.
And you have that. And I mean this in the best way, territory feel, where you're not trying to be WWE and you're not trying to be bigger than you are. You are a regional wrestling promotion that says, I'm a regional wrestling promotion.
Exactly.
And these are our champions. And this is why everybody's chasing our champions. And that's what I instantly loved about it.
Thank you.
And I will be watching more as my time permits. You can bet on it.
Well, you know what, man? It's on YouTube. Everybody can watch it at their own leisure. If you want to binge watch like I do Cobra Kai, then
you can. Same, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Well, that was when you talking territory. That's a perfect segue into what I want to talk about for just a couple of minutes. Let's talk about Memphis. Let's talk about CWA. Let's talk about the old time Lance Russell, Jerry Lawler, Dave Brown, these guys that you grew up on. I mean, I actually got to work out there in that territory for a little bit. That's, I learned a lot just by going to all these places and just watching, just sitting around on my rear end and watching. But this territory in Memphis that you grew up on, did you ever, in the wildest imagination, think you would ever design or make the Southern Heavyweight Championship, for goodness sakes?
Oh gosh, no, nothing of the kind. And that is and mine is actually in a case behind me, or I would grab it. My 1979 Reggie Parks version.
Beautiful.
In Memphis, it debuted in late '81. AWA Southern Heavyweight Championship belt is the reason I do what I do, and it's this style, but it was a 7-plater. And it was black and gold. This was the late 1981 debut AWA Southern Tag Team title belt in Memphis.
That's gorgeous.
So if you want to talk about real quick Memphis history, I've been asked before, and I've got belts out here that were ring worn in different places. Mm-hmm. But if you could grab one, if you had to get out of your house and you could only grab one, and I always go back to this one. And I go back to this one because, maybe that you're just a Lawler or a Dundee or a Fabulous Ones, or, oh my gosh, you go on and on. Or maybe you're a Shawn Michaels fan. Shawn Michaels wore it. Shawn Michaels wore it.
Right.
Joe LaDuke wore it, right? So what a range right there I just gave you.
Oh, my God, yeah.
From Shawn Michaels to Joe LaDuke to Jerry Lawler to Steve Kern, to Bobby Eaton, right?
Bless his heart, man. Yeah, Bobby Eaton.
Beautiful Bobby Eaton right here. Yep. Stan Lane right here. Again, Shawn Michaels, Marty Jannetty right here. Whatever you like, if you were a wrestling fan that goes back more than than 20 years. Whoever you like, there's a good Rick Rude right here, King
Sure.
Kong Bundy right here. We can go on and we can do this all day.
Oh, I know. And I would enjoy doing it all day long.
It's
That's
just
just me though.
So yeah, same. So
Yeah.
this right here, as little and simple as it is compared to a lot of what you see out there today, means more to me than all the big $10,000 belts. I've done $20,000 NFL belts that I would step on to get over there to pick this up, and so. But
that belt represents history, though, Dave. I mean, that's like you were talking about the wrestlers that held it, and it. You're right. It's just something that you'd step over everything and grab a hold of because that is your favorite thing in there, and you got to have a favorite. You can't grab them all,
Right. Yeah. And I have some things out here that I value in terms of. I mean, geez, I got the shirt out here that the King that Jerry Lawler died on TV and for 20 minutes was legally dead. Is hanging 7 feet from me.
Yeah.
I've got Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert's my favorite Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert jacket is hanging out here. 4 or 5 Jerry Lawler capes on the wall. Memphis.
Yeah, Memphis. Like you fabulous ones like you were talking about, Kern and Lane, and Ricky and Robert got their start out there. Rock and Roll did, and so many people, between Knoxville and Memphis, between Kazana, Fuller, Goulas, Welch, Jarrett, and God rest Jerry's soul, man. I hated to hear that yesterday when that happened.
Yeah. I mean, one of the two people most directly responsible for why I'm a wrestling fan. But you mentioned Ricky and Rob real quick we will get back to Mr. Jarrett. If I can keep my equipment here.
Yeah.
Ricky and Robert twice, two or three times right here. So that's you can't, how I miss Ricky and Robert. I don't know.
It's easy. But Robert doesn't talk and Ricky does. So,
but by then, Jerry Jarrett, when he wasn't wrestling nearly as much, but Jeff Jarrett, that was Jeff Jarrett's second belt in the business,
Wow.
So, we can go on and on about that, but, yes, to have a rough couple of weeks for the home team here.
Oh yeah, it definitely has been.
And we'll make as much time to talk about the rest of Memphis as you want, because I love it.
Sure.
But you get.
I mean, this is our time. If we want to be on here for an hour, we'll be on here for an hour. If we want to be on for 2, we'll be on for 2. I don't care.
I'm here, man. I'm here.
We can split this thing up into two.
Well, I'm here for whatever we need to do.
There you go. We
got for the home team here. Last week was the major stroke. Jerry Lawler, and then of course everybody out there knows that now as we're recording this yesterday, we lost Jerry Jarrett, and those two men are with a lot of surrounding people, a lot of moving parts, and a lot of people that contributed, but ultimately it gets down to those two men are the reason that I'm sitting here.
You're right. Yeah. And I throw a lot of other wrestlers in that same category that you're talking about. I mean, you're on one end of the state, I was on the other.
Right.
I mean, I know Lawler had come in here and he worked for my grandfather
he
was, and you've seen the video. He was just a kid, and he cut his teeth here up in Knoxville. I mean, it's been tough, but that dad blame Jerry Lawler. I mean, he's like a $2 steak, I mean, he's a tough old dude. I mean, heart attack and dies on television, has a stroke last week, and he's up and he's motivating. I mean, he is a miracle of modern medicine. That dude is.
He's just made such a difference in my life. And I knew Jerry Jarrett. And Jerry Jarrett was great to me. I love Jeff to pieces. Jeff is just such a great guy.
Yeah, he is.
And we've done so much together over the years. And my heart is broken for that family. And I don't know. And of course, you got a lot of history in your family of great booking, but I don't know of a better wrestling promoter and booker than Jerry Jarrett.
It'd be hard to say. I mean, for the longevity that he had, for the ideas that he came up with, he and Lawler both, I guess, over and over and over again, they'd just recycle stuff and it would just be so new.
That combination was the best I've ever seen. And if
Exactly.
you want, if you want proof of who Jerry Jarrett was, when a company would get in trouble, WWE called Jerry Jarrett.
WCW. Well, so did WCW towards the tail end of my run with them. They called Jerry in down
WCW.
there. WCW. Definitely. And I tell you something about Jeff. You're talking about Jeff, and this is a little funny little story. And like I said, we can talk about this. I don't care if we talk all night long. Crockett Cup last year.
Yeah.
Jeff was there as one of the special referees for, I can't remember which match it was. I think it was Aldous and whoever he was defending the title against at the time. And it was actually AJ, my son. AJ, it was actually his, sure, I guess maybe second show that he did with the NWA at the time. And so he was going to be on the Crockett Cup. So we decided to take a trip over to Nashville and check it out at the fairgrounds. Hadn't been there since I wrestled there in the late 80s. And so we get over there and, I mean, honestly, if I'm not part of the show, I really don't want to hang around the dressing room,
Right. Sure.
People still recognize me out on the floor, and that's fine. But I don't want to be that old guy that shows up, and said, what's this guy doing here? But Jeff, we left the show and I got a call from AJ and AJ said, "Where are you?" And I said, "Well, we're headed home." And he said, "Well, Jeff wanted you to come backstage. He wanted to see you." And I said, "Well, you should have called me sooner." But there's not been a show that he's been on or that Jeff's been around AJ that he's not asked about me or I've not asked about him or, tell your dad I said hello. It's always been that kind of relationship with him, and I like Jeff and I teased him one time. I had him booked on a show here and he went in the Hall of Fame the same weekend. And I teased him. I said, "You know what? Anybody that I book goes straight to the WWE Hall of Fame. Jeff Jarrett, Ricky and Robert, just a shame I didn't book the Midnights quick enough or they could have gone in a long time ago." But that's just a quick little story about Jeff and what kind of person that he is. He's never forgotten, me as a punk kid, out in Memphis or places that our paths have crossed. And he's one of the good guys in the business,
He is positive, deep thinker, super intelligent. And if you want to, this is, people can think what they want and say what they want, and God knows they do. So I will too. Right now, Jeff is, just a matter of months younger than me. And right now, and I don't watch, and I don't really watch current big time wrestling unless there's a one-off match or a reason or somebody says, "Hey, check this one out." I don't watch. It's not that I want to be that guy or I'm too cool for it. It's just, it's so oversaturated. It's hard for me to find time to see it all. But I have seen enough from watching him get ready to do the Ric Flair last match to watching what he's done with GCW, what he's done when he showed up in AEW, what he has done in recent matches there where I would see enough of the match on social to know what doesn't surprise me a bit. But you can hate on Jeff Jarrett. Like I just talked about my haters, right?
Sure.
You're doing something right.
We've all got them.
And Jeff Jarrett right now could carry any championship at 55 years old and looks
great.
I don't know how many years younger. He is in excellent shape. He can work his ass off, which he always could, no matter what people say. Always could. When have you ever seen a Jeff Jarrett match where he's lost or where anybody else in the ring with him is lost? They won't be for long. No. He is a master of his craft. Jeff Jarrett could carry any title in the sport right now and do so convincingly. That's how good Jeff Jarrett is.
It is nice to know that the two of y'all are younger than I am, and that's sad though. I mean, I just put my head down. It's like now they're both younger than now. I never even thought about Jeff being younger than me, but it's like, oh God, now he's younger than I am. God, I'm ancient.
He's younger than me too, but not by much.
You said by months.
Yeah, matter of months. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's jump back into these title belts, because I mean we could get off on
let's
the rest
do it.
of
That's
this
what we're doing.
Long, so.
Yeah.
But let's we've talked about a little bit about Memphis. When I guess when they decided to I guess merge or be bought out by Vern, AWA versus WCCW, Memphis was still around. I mean, that territory, that area was still there, because I can remember Lawler bringing that unified title into Memphis all the time.
Yeah.
The unified championship is something that you did make. Is that correct?
I made the one that he's got now, but the one made I was in Germany when the late 1988 one was which was actually presented to him by Randy Hales on December 31st. I only know this because it's a standout date. New Year's Eve, 1988. Randy Hales presented Jerry with the belt on television, and I was in Baumholder, Germany. Okay. So Reggie made it.
Okay. Well, then it was you did it.
But we have, God knows I've replicated enough times, including the one that Jerry owns now.
Right.
So, but yeah, that was, I connected with Reggie sometime in, I want to say it was 94, and I had been making belts before then and done some touch up work for Jerry on stuff and fix stuff up, put stuff back together, things like that. But I didn't even reach out to Reggie until 94. I'm pretty sure that's the right year.
Okay. Well,
but when I did, boom, boom, boom. I mean, it took, it was like the first year in felt like 5, and I mean that in the best way, but it was like, it was a crash course in this is what we do. This is what we do here. And this is why we do it. And this is WWE or WWF at the time.
Right.
And I was there when that went sideways. And then I was there when they came back to me. Of course, I was the guy that brought them back, and ultimately the reason that Reggie finished out his days getting royalty checks that he should have been getting since the 80s.
Sure,
so,
exactly.
Well, there's that little history lesson. But the unified belt, unified title, which I've got. Oh, that's the ring used one, and that's. I got one back there that's pristine. That's about 6 or 7 years old.
I was going to say, how would these fans, that watches this podcast, if they look around the room like this and they say, well, there's the unified belt, and there's the big gold, and there's the 10 pounds of gold, all ring worn. That's pretty awesome. I've got to come to your house one day.
Man, you absolutely do. And I'll tell you, I get asked, and I have been for years asked, people would say, oh, can I bring my son to your house? Well, how old's your son? Well, he's 12 or he's 10 or something. Well, you certainly can, and he might recognize, an AEW belt on the floor or
sure,
or the WWE belt on the floor over there. It's like that. What you see out here a lot of is you'll see a Southern tag team belt or a Southern heavyweight belt or the Tennessee heavyweight championship that was used in East Tennessee.
Oh yeah, the Buddy Landale belt.
The Buddy Land.
Yes, there it is.
That's right. I said it.
Yep. That's it. That is the ring worn championship held first by Doug Furness. And here's your tidbit of information. And you probably know this. I probably told you, you've heard it. The night that Doug won that championship, it was my grandmother that actually presented it to him.
I did not know that.
Yes.
I have some great pictures of Doug with the belt, courtesy of my buddy Scott Forenzi, who's not only one of the great wrestling photographers, but also of days gone by, but also collector. Just incredible collection. And I have some great shots that I never had before of Doug with it and of Buddy with it.
I think they're the only two that actually had it during USA Wrestling.
Cooley had it. Wendell had it.
Wendell did?
Know that he did. I don't know that I have a great picture of Wendell with it. I think I have something, but Wendell had it. Buddy had it. And Doug had it.
Yeah.
And my gosh, for all of Doug's standout, incredible accomplishments, whether you want to talk football or wrestling or whatever, it means a lot to me for that. But I'm not going to lie to you. I have it, and I bought it because of Buddy. Buddy was just that. He was my buddy. And
Buddy was Buddy.
I wouldn't talk to Buddy at times for quite some time.
Yeah.
and then I'd hear from him, and he'd always tell me he loved me when we hung up, and vice versa, because Buddy had a great heart. And we were, before we started this show, we were talking about naturals, guys that just naturally, well, Buddy naturally had it.
Oh, there's no doubt.
He always knew what he was doing, why he was doing it, and could tell you why he was doing it and why you should be doing it. So,
and for all of his faults that he had while he was wrestling, I still, to the day that he passed away, I don't think he ever had any regrets for doing any of it. I mean, I talked to Buddy a lot. Buddy and I, we actually were in high school together.
I never knew that, Joe.
Well, he went to Fulton. He was a little older than I was, but he also transferred out to Halls. But he was there for a little while I was at Fulton, and I knew him there. He was just a normal dude. I mean, he was ball player, good football player, and knocked me on my rear end a couple of times, and that's fine. I got him back years later.
Sure.
But Buddy was great. And another tidbit of information: the Dirty White Boy also went to high school with him. So,
oh my gosh,
yeah, we all went to Fulton High School in Knoxville. But with Buddy, it's like you said, Buddy was just being Buddy, and that championship you got right there. I've seen one other one, and it's a replica, of course, but it just, to me, that championship should have been one and done. Nobody should have ever replicated it, in my opinion.
Yeah, this style of belt, which this Tennessee one is completely unique. It was a one of one by the George Levy Company in Florida, but they were famous for the national belts that the Road Warriors had, and they were famous for that style of belt, which of course was also used, for U.S. junior heavyweight titles and things like that. Mm-hmm. Southern tag team titles in Memphis in the 70s, and
national title in Atlanta,
national heavyweight title, red, white, and blue version.
Yep.
So so the Levy Company was famous for that, but they actually made this one as well. I had an opportunity to get it. 6-7 years ago, and I couldn't pass it up.
Absolutely.
And so
you had to jump on it, man, when you had the chance.
I did, and even with the brief history that it's got overall, looks like that was Buddy's belt. And I always kind of thought of it as Buddy's belt, and I display it here with a big foam board, and I was just looking over at it, a big foam board of Buddy holding the belt.
Yep.
That I have. It's really colorful and sturdy, and so I just propped the belt up in front of that. But yeah, that's why that's.
Well, you're right. I mean, it is. It's the Buddy belt, and that's no two ways around it. I mean, it was his. A little bit forward. I guess it was probably somewhere around 2018, maybe. I guess it was 2018, 2017. You came in here and did a show with me. Brought your various championships in here. Yeah. Brought the Southeastern Championship that evening as well. I think I actually had a tear in my eye, but that's a Flair story, so I can't use his line. I did use that line. I used that line last week. But you brought, and I don't think they're the originals, but the USA Tag Team Championships, because basically Davey Rich kind of shamed you into bringing it that night.
Yeah,
said, you got to bring these championships,
Yeah,
and but you brought, and I don't think they're the originals, but the USA Tag Team Championships, because basically Davey Rich kind of shamed you into bringing it that night.
Yeah,
you got to bring these championships,
Yeah,
and
probably too far back. They're on a shelf back there.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, and you brought them in, and I think Davey had a tear in his eye when he saw them. I think those are his favorite belts, but they were as gorgeous as any belt. I mean, Ron Fuller, when he wanted a championship and you designed them, man, I mean, it was, they were really cool for that era, for that time,
They were. You're talking late 80s stuff. And then they ended up in Memphis when USA shut down. And you didn't have a whole bunch of crossover there. So people didn't necessarily know they weren't just brand new belts for Memphis, because when they came to Memphis in about 1990 or so, they looked brand new, even though they'd been used for like 2 years.
Right.
They'd been very well taken care of and looked like $1 million on television.
Oh
And
yeah.
up close, people didn't realize that they said USA Wrestling instead of USWA.
But just the nickel covering that was on the silver. I mean, that popped. I mean, and on the red, it really popped.
Oh,
you know,
you know what? It's you can hear me the whole time, and I'm not going to be outside. Just we'll show everybody what we're talking about.
Everybody's going to get an idea of what you got sitting back there in your stash.
Yeah, that's all right.
That's all right. Yeah, if anybody wants to go to the Dave Millican Museum, right there, $10, and you can go through it all day long.
$10, yeah. That's right.
There you go. $10, you can go right through it. And for thousands of bucks, you can have one of them. There it is.
Yeah, but this is what you're talking about. This is the
oh yeah, man.
Yeah, and you mentioned Davey Rich, our buddy David Haskett. He's actually the reason that I brought him that night. So
that championship, for like I said, for the era, man, that thing right there was probably, it was 5 years ahead of its time.
Oh yeah.
At the time.
It's just like what Reggie did with the classics. Like the classic Intercontinental belt is a pretty basic belt, right? Well, this is a very basic belt up close, but less is more sometimes as the saying goes.
But just look at it. I mean, just at the silver and red.
And see, we didn't know by the time that the originals there showed up in Memphis, we didn't realize that was Ron Fuller's logo because we didn't know. But
is it really?
Yeah, the USA Wrestling logo.
Did you make the USA Heavyweight Championship too?
Reggie made. See, again, I was in Germany.
That's right. That's right.
I was in Germany at the exact same time both of those were made, and I came in, not all that long behind that, especially not in wrestling years. But then I did. It broke my heart because in about, I think it was 96, Jerry Lawler asked me to redo them, and I was like, "Oh, great, I can do that." Like, we're just gonna fix up the red leather, and he's like, "Oh God, no, I always hated that red leather." He's like, "Put them on black for me, and can you do something with that paint and make it matched?" And I was like, "Yeah, I can do whatever you want." So that's why I've seen people online having conversations about, "Oh no, there were two different sets." No, there was one set. They just got reworked in about 1996. So when those pictures of Flex Kavana, who ended up being The Rock, and Bart Sawyer out there with the USWA tag team belts, and they're black. Well, that's why, because we had redone them just before that. So,
well, I tell you something, man. I like those the Davey Rich belt. We'll call that the Davey Rich belt.
Davey Rich belt.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. It's beautiful. Let's come forward a little bit more. Let's talk about the Big Gold.
Oh yeah,
the original Big Gold.
That's actually kind of going back to about 19.
Well, a little bit, but we'll talk about that real quick. Yeah, the original Big Gold, one with a little bend in the plate. Did you do that one? Or did Reggie do that, the first one?
Neither. It was not made by a championship belt maker.
Really?
It was delivered in February of 1986. And my buddy Dick Bourne and I did a book on it, which I get included with that stuff, and I've never written a word of any of those books. I just gave information, and we shared some pictures and that sort of thing. But we did a book on the 10 pounds of gold, and then we followed up with a book on the Big Gold belt, and it was made by Crumrine Jewelers in Reno, Nevada. And the reason for that is because Nelson Royal had a rodeo history and a relationship with them for making rodeo buckles. And when Jim Crockett wanted something that he just kind of felt like Rick had outgrown the old dome globe look at the time, and you had Rick, who had recently at that time had a big, in which Rick started out in the AWA, but it was before the big Bockwinkel belt had debuted when Rick had started out there at first. Rick, by the way, started out with Reggie. Vern put him around the horn with Reggie, who was wrestling for Vern at the time, because he didn't want Rick to get chewed up and spit out. That's a little sidebar. That's the truth. And Rick to this day remembers it and had a great reverence for Reggie for taking care of him. But anyway, so I think maybe, and this is my speculation, that Rick the Crockett brand had grown so big, and I think, Rick had a short time before that done like a unification match with Rick Martel, which of course was going to be a schmoz. And I think they just wanted something bigger and something that stood out more And so Nelson Royal got thrown into the mix there and said, I got your people for that. And they went through a couple of different drafts. And some of the bootleg guys have used our book and different things and done a really, really good job of it. And then there's also the version out there that came from the original version was going to have NWA in big letters across the top. And then Crockett decided that he might just end up outgrowing that NWA too, or going his own way rather, however you choose to phrase that. And so that belt ended up reworked without the NWA at the top. It was made by Crumrine Jewelers, who were primarily known for rodeo belt buckles.
I got you.
And other little jewelry. My daughter actually has a pair as a gift from my buddy Dick Bourne, has a pair of Crumrine earrings. So,
oh, cool.
Yeah. So they did a lot of that stuff.
Well, the one big goal that I know you made was Kevin Nash's. Well,
it's kind of gotten crossed up there. Kevin's was cast off of the original belt, as was, there's a handful of them out there. I'll just say that some people don't like that. Some people still try to work the gimmick that theirs is the original. And Conrad Thompson owns the original and has for years. I know I was with him the day that we picked it up.
I know Rick wore it at his final match.
He did.
Yeah.
I actually cleaned it up for that and
looked good.
Cleaned it up and shined it up the best I could. But Kevin's was cast off of that. The WCW prop guy at the time cast a handful of copies, and it got put on the truck. And then Kevin and I did some business, and it ended up as mine for quite some time until I was just offered enough money that didn't make sense to keep it anymore.
I know you had that belt.
I
think you had it at my show. You'd brought it.
Sure
Yeah, you'd brought it with the Tennessee and the USA tag.
Well, the reason that you probably thought I made it is because it didn't. The leather that it was put on from that prop maker, the prop guy was not good, not good at all. So it ended up on my strap. I couldn't bear the one that, and Kevin never used his in the ring that I'm aware of. Kevin just wanted it. They had that little run of time where that one WCW prop guy was around. And if you had the title and you wanted your own personal copy, you could buy it. So Kevin did.
Yeah. There's your first what you call it replica belt.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So we did. So it did end up on my strap, and I think probably for that a lot of people thought it started with me, and all I did was I just couldn't bear to look at that really, really bad. We're talking about the old original belt that we replicated for you, or at least made the custom version of for you. Mm-hmm. And Molkovich didn't do anything on the leather. He didn't do any. Molkovich, although he did like croc prints and things like that, used a lot of croc prints, but he didn't do any leather tooling, none.
Well, I went back and you're talking about mine. I went back and I started looking at some old pictures, and Memphis, they actually had tag championships.
They did
exactly like that one, because I think I saw Jerry Jarrett and Tojo. They had the belts on. It's like, wow, that's the same championship. That's the same belt. So
and I believe they started with no side plates as well, and ended up with some just blank metal ones
like a square thing. I think you and I talked about the little just a gold squares from a trophy shop.
Yeah, you can find pictures of them with no. I've got a great Jim Cornette picture of the belts with no side plates, and then I have some great old shots of Jerry Lawler and Jim White with them where they had 3 side plates on each side, and there's nothing on those side plates, but they're shiny. Which kind of shiny in comparison to the main plate, which is pretty brassy looking.
I was gonna say it was like a brassy dull color. I think is what it was.
Yeah, some of the early Molkovich stuff was that way before he got into getting them gold plated. I've got one Molkovich back here in the floor, but it was made. It was used in Austria. It was Otto Vons, who ended up taking the AWA title for a little bit from Nick Bockwinkel. Bought his way into an AWA championship. From Nick Bockwinkel. And I've got his old belt back here behind me. But Molkovich was a craftsman, and some of the stuff up close is a little crude compared to Reggie's, but it was a different process, entirely different process.
Well, it's like you said, it was a mold, it was a cast, and it. Like I said, with mine, I don't know how you guys did it, but all the way down to the fonts were just, I mean, dead perfect. You
Well,
know,
we
and
did that, and then we went a little forward with it, and gave you some leather tooling where it's going to kind of hold its own against anything that's out there today, and not
sure.
look like it's old, but it pays homage to the original, and
It, and
keeps
it
true to
does,
the
and
original.
that's what it's for. And
Yeah,
people don't understand. They've asked me 1,000 times. You know, here you are. You know, you got access to any type of style championship, you know, because,
sure.
you know Dave Millican. I mean, he can make whatever you want, but yet you go back to the old style. Well, it's like we're talking. We're paying respects basically to my grandfather's Southeastern
Right.
Championship title. I mean, and I just so happen to be using it as mine. As you know, it's just one of those things that I felt real strong about. You know, as far as what I wanted and
Yeah.
what I was doing was that championship. And like I said, you completely did it 100% justice. And
Well,
I
that
would
was the goal.
never have thought about having anybody else do that championship. You know, if it was just a plain Jane, whatever, that's fine. But this was a big deal,
Well, I
and,
appreciate it, man, and I was
you know,
honored to do it. I really was,
oh,
and I got a little off track there, but only because I was saying, like the old Kevin Nash strap. That guy, when
mhm,
he would do those straps, they were so primitive, and it made me think of a couple of the earlier Molkovich ones where they didn't have anything on them.
right.
And that, but at least those cuts were better. Molkovich was good at the leather cuts and stuff. And I'm not, God knows, I'm not trying to be negative to anybody. The guy wasn't a belt maker; he was a prop guy.
Right.
Um, but that leather was killing me, so it ended up on my strap, and that's what I ended up selling it on too. It left here on my strap. I was never trying to sell it, never interested to sell it, and turned a bunch of people down. But at some point, you hit a number, and it's just like, oh well, I don't think it makes sense to keep it anymore.
I understand. Hey, listen, you and I've had that conversation. You know, when do you actually get rid of something? Well, when the number's right.
Yeah, yeah,
Because here's the thing: you're Dave Millican, you can make another one. You know,
yeah.
so I mean,
Well,
it's
and we do actually have the original mold that was used to make the original belt. Wasn't made from a mold; it was hand carved out of
mhm.
silver, and then overlaid in areas with the gold plating. But the prop guy that that did make Kevin's copy and the other copies that are out there that are legitimate with the bent top. Uh, Again, I'll reference my buddy Conrad Thompson, but he got in touch with that guy shortly after we got the big gold belt, and he bought those molds. So even that we have those molds are in my shop
Yep.
for the
Well,
original
that's good.
belt
And that means nobody can get their
from the
hands
original.
on it. You know,
Correct. Yeah, and
and
we
and,
make a
and
lot of copies, but you can't
oh, sure, you
but you
do. I
can't
mean,
but yeah, but it won't be. And that's great. But I've talked to him about that, and I said, what do you think about the fact they've used our book to get so much better and stuff? And he said, oh, I think it's great. They're cool to, they've done such a great job with them and upgrading from some of the older, more primitive copies. And
mhm,
he said, I don't care they're never going to have the original one. He said, let
absolutely
them
not.
make all they want to because they're never going to have this one.
Well, I mean, you can pick and choose exactly who you want to make something for and who you don't want to make something for, which is going to basically lead me to my last question for you. And like I
Okay.
said, we could go all night long, and honestly, it wouldn't hurt my feelings if we did. It'd save me from watching whatever I'm getting ready to watch on television. Let's talk about the AEW Championship for just a second.
Okay.
I guess it was you and I had talked maybe right after AEW had actually fired up. You were talking about doing the first championship, and you were working with Cody, trying to get the right design, the right feel, the right everything. Tell everybody just exactly what the first run looked like, and if you're comfortable with it, tell everybody how much that first belt would have cost.
Um, my conversations with Cody at that time were kind of limited. Really, Cody just gave a lot of input on. I think he and Tony Khan had gotten together and liked the idea of it being the size of the old Bill Watts North American Championship, and that was. And I don't truly know. I think that was Cody's input toward Tony. And Cody and I had some conversations, and then there was some back and forth with his wife Brandy over the original version of the women's title. Um, which she and I think Kenny Omega kind of spearheaded what that looked like. And we went from there and pitched them a bunch of ideas. My original ideas were that it be kind of married in a much smaller style to the heavyweight championship. And then ultimately they decided to get away from that and go with this other look that we started out with. But that's where it started. As far as cost go, the original one was not only rushed, but you were paying for stonework and you're paying for all this stuff. It was 5 figures.
And see now let's make sure everybody understands this. We're talking $10,000 or more.
Yeah.
For the original, very first AEW championship, and
yes.
people want to think that $150 replica version is okay.
Preposterous. Yeah. I've seen so many of them, and the replica company that did do the replicas. I've got a couple of them that they sent me as part of our agreement. Even when I sold out the art design to them, which they own the design in its entirety as long as it has their logo on it. And when I sold that out to them and stuff, we made an agreement where I would get, some of the samples like we usually get from any big company we do business with.
Right.
And that company did a really, really good job. The stones aren't quite the same quality, and the plates are one layer, I think, thinner than the original belts that I did for them, the couple that I did for them. But they did a really, really good job. And if you got one of those, you got about as close as you're going to get. And then, my gosh, I've seen these $200 ones, and it's like, and if you're okay and you want to display that, then that's your business. It's not legal, but it's also what nobody's going to sue you over buying a belt. It's you go after the makers. It's hard to sue somebody in Pakistan.
Sure.
So, you got what you got. And if you fool yourself into thinking it's like their 5-figure belt, then that's okay. You can do that if you like. That makes you feel better.
Well, I'm going to tell you something. I know that you had told me originally, the actual cost, and I kind of hit the floor. It was like, are you kidding me? He said, no. And I said, my God.
Before everybody thinks that I just pocketed a whole bunch of money, and of course I made money for what I did.
Well, sure you did.
You're not going to stay in business very long if you don't. But you're talking, you're well into 4 figures by the time that you get all the engraving done, and by the time that you've got the stonework done, you're well into 4 by the time you get into get to that level. Not to mention paying the artist that created, which is my buddy Rico that we've mentioned before. So by the time you do all of that, and I think we went down a little bit on the next one that we did because we could.
Right.
But still, you're not that much under it. I mean, it's an expensive belt to make if you're going to do it right.
Any of them are. And again, I know what mine cost. And listen, that's nothing to sneeze at. My belt's, it's a beautiful belt. And I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. And it was well worth it, believe me. But some of these championships that are out there are very elaborate. Like you're talking, I think the AEW championship is probably the most elaborate that I've actually seen in recent memory. I don't think there's anything else out there that's that elaborate. I know WWE changes their little side plates and things like that. Well, that's great, yada, yada. AEW, I think, has changed the leather for their champion now. They've made it plaid or some kind of crazy color. But the design of it and all the etching or the integral parts of it, I mean, it goes without saying that belt probably weighs 30 pounds and, and it's well worth the money, Yeah,
it's heavy, and it's not one I'd want to have to lug around. But when you go back, we were just talking a few minutes ago about the original big gold belt. Well, some people don't like the gigantic belts, although these days, I think if you got one that's the size of that one or the size of even this one, they want to act like they're not big enough, which is preposterous to me. But the AEW belt makes a statement the minute that you see it. And when you see it under arena lights or especially under television lights, and those crystals are popping off like flash bulbs. And then you got silver and you got gold and you got, I can't even speak to that. I was aware that they did something. I haven't even seen a good picture of it or anything like that, but
it's plaid.
And then when I think it was supposed to be like
it looks like a scarf,
something like that. But you know, that belt makes a statement, and it doesn't matter if you're in the cheap seats. I know that I watched Chris Jericho wear it out when we were in Baltimore, and we were in like a skybox, and it didn't matter that we were that high up over the arena. It's like the minute that you saw it, and it's like, I always remember Nick Bockwinkel coming to Memphis so much with the big belt, the big world championship, and watching that. It didn't matter where you were at. You'd see the Coliseum lights made every stone on it look like a flash bulb going off.
Yep.
And that belt had, it was a good number of stones on it, but nothing like the nearly 1,000 stones that's on the AEW belt.
Good Lord. That's a lot of stones.
800 plus stones on the
Oh,
on the
God.
So
wow.
It had nothing. When television lights or good arena lights hit that thing, forget about it. It's gonna knock your socks off. They wanted to make a statement. And so that's where Cody came in, and Cody wanted something that nothing else. He felt like nothing else would stand up to, and Tony agreed. And that's where that came in. Or my conversations with Cody early on about it. I keep hearing now everybody says, "Oh, do you think Cody will be able to bring the Winged Eagle belt back?" Well, I have no idea. He did bring the Intercontinental Championship back, so I know that.
I think if they drop the strap on him, I think he'll be able to wear any belt he wants to. Not everybody's been able to, because there's been a previous champ or two that wanted to kind of go back, and the management there said we don't want to take a step back. But Cody has a way of getting things done. Well, not just that. I think that with quote unquote different management at the top right now, I think they're more traditional. I mean, Hunter and Sean both are more traditional. So
I would love to see it. And if he gets it done, then I need to find out what his favorite drink of choice is and send him a nice bottle. And I'll probably, if the minute I find out that he got it done, he'd be hearing from me. And
well, sure.
I'd love to see it done because selfish reasons. For selfish reasons, obviously, I don't as much care about making every belt that they've got anymore. My business is just as much or more licensing these days, but just to have that back, even if we had to modify it, and Cody the guy doing it, I mean, man, I'd be on that. I'd be signed up for that real quick.
That would be the probably your quintessential finale, I think.
I think
as far as doing something like that.
And I'd love to see it. I have no idea. To be clear for everybody that's watching out there, I have zero idea if that would ever happen. Or I know that Cody's mentioned it. Cody has also said, "Hey guys, I'm telling you what I think would be cool. I'm not telling you I can do it. I'm not telling you that it'll happen." And I think, in fairness to Cody, we should probably put that out there.
Sure.
By the
time we finish this podcast and it gets out there on YouTube, you and I will have already had Cody winning the championship at WrestleMania from Roman, and he'll have the Winged Eagle the very next night. And it's probably in your shop right now. Just to be fair, that's probably what's going. We might even be on the dirt sheets tomorrow. Millican and Kazana discussed Winged Eagle back in Dave Millican's garage.
Nothing that I see, from the latest other podcast I did, the Chris Jericho thing. I saw, I had my buddy the other day send me a clickbait thing where the guy, so he said this, and he said this, and he said this. I'm like, well, can't they just go listen to the podcast? But so you never underestimate the internet or what's going to be out there.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And the last thing I'm going to say is those NWA US Tag Team Championships really look good around my kids and his cousin's waist, But my God, those are heavy too. Oh my God, they're about 25 pounds, but they're beautiful belts as well. And I know that they're based on the Sheik's belt, if I'm not mistaken, from Detroit.
Yeah. One of the Sheik's original U.S. belts. Yeah.
Right. Well, anyway, man, we've been on here for over an hour, and I could go another hour, but
I had no idea what time it is, but I do know.
Well, it's 7:47 over here in the eastern part of of Tennessee. So I know you're in the middle part. So you're at 647. So you're probably ready to eat supper. But anyway, this has been great. And I tell you something, I would love to circle back in a couple of months and do another one and follow up on all this. Maybe by the time WrestleMania is over with and you Dave, you're going to do the Winged Eagle again. Maybe we can circle back and just see, just the touch base again, because like I said, we scratched the surface. We talked about Memphis. We talked a little about Knoxville, but we didn't even get anywhere else. But Tennessee, we didn't get to Georgia, the Carolinas, anywhere. And that's where I wanted to go, but I knew we wouldn't have time. But we're going to stay on here all damn night. And
well,
it's going to pour the fire out of everybody. They're going to cancel their subscriptions.
You know what a couple of the boys that have been around for a while are going to do when something works, right? We're going to bring it back. So
you doggone right. So maybe we'll rediscuss this after. We'll revisit each other after WrestleMania. I'm sure you and I'll talk between now and then. But in any case, I want to thank you, Dave, for coming on to my podcast. I can't thank you enough for doing my championship. I can't thank you enough for coming to my podcast, doing my wrestling show, and I can't thank you enough for being my buddy. All of them are an honor. Thank you. And in this stage of our life, you just don't ever know what tomorrow's going to hold. And
yes, sir.
I've got a few friends in this business, and I do consider you one of my closest friends inside the business. You're a friend, you're a buddy. I'd talk to you about anything. But I do appreciate you coming on the show, and I hope to have you on here again real soon. But what's the last word, Dave? You've got it.
Last word is let's see how that WrestleMania thing turns out, and then we'll circle back and talk about that and see how it works out. That's the last word.
Exactly. I was thinking the same thing. But anyway, for Dave Millican, I'm Joe Kazana. This is my podcast. We'll see you next week.